He signed the divorce papers without knowing her father just bought his company. The morning Daniel Mercer handed his wife divorce papers, he was already on the phone with his lawyer celebrating. He had no idea that by noon, he wouldn't have a company, a title, or a single person left in his corner. Some men destroy the best thing in their lives and call it a fresh start. Daniel was one of those men. Cassie Mercer, born Cassandra Whitfield, had never once mentioned money to Daniel. Not when they met at a coffee shop in Austin, Texas, where she was working double shifts to pay for nursing school. Not when they got married in a courthouse with 12 guests and a bouquet from a gas station. And certainly not when she quietly transferred her own savings, every single dollar, into his failing tech startup to keep it alive. She loved him. That was all she thought he needed to know. Daniel, on the other hand, had always been a little embarrassed by Cassie. She was kind and plain and hardworking, everything he'd found charming at 26 and suffocating at 34. By the time his company, Mercer Tech, started gaining real traction, Daniel had already started looking at his life differently. Better suits. Better restaurants. A woman named Brooke who wore designer perfume and laughed at all his jokes at investor dinners. Cassie noticed. She always noticed. But she stayed quiet, held the house together, worked her nursing shifts, and told herself that good men go through phases. Then she found the texts. Not just flirty texts. Not a one-time mistake. 2 years. Hotel receipts. A birthday trip to Napa she thought he'd taken for a conference. Brooke had even sent a photo wearing Cassie's anniversary gift, the gold bracelet Daniel said he'd lost at the gym. Cassie sat on the bathroom floor for an hour. Then she got up, washed her face, and made dinner. She didn't say a word. 2 weeks later, Daniel handed her a manila envelope over breakfast like it was a utility bill. "I think we both know this isn't working," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "My lawyer made it simple. You keep the car and 3 months of expenses. I keep the house and the company. It's fair." Cassie looked at the envelope. Then at her husband of 8 years. "Did you ever love me?" she asked quietly. Daniel finally looked up. There was no cruelty in his face, somehow that was worse. Just impatience. "Cassie, don't make this harder than it needs to be." She signed. She stood up, picked up her nursing bag, and walked out of the kitchen without another word. No tears, no screaming. Just the soft sound of the front door closing behind her. Daniel poured himself a second cup of coffee and texted Brooke a single word, "Done." He was still smiling when his phone rang. It was his CFO, Marcus. "Daniel." Marcus's voice was strange. Tight. "Did you know that Whitfield Capital bought a 43% stake in Mercer Tech last night?" Daniel set down his coffee. "What?" "They acquired it through 3 shell companies. It was quiet, it was fast, and as of this morning, they have enough combined shares with the early investors to call a board meeting." "Daniel," Marcus paused. "Whitfield Capital is worth somewhere north of $400 billion. The name hit Daniel like cold water. Whitfield. Cassie's last name was Whitfield. He told himself it was a coincidence. There were thousands of Whitfields in America. He grabbed his laptop and searched the name, fingers moving fast. The first result was a Forbes profile from 3 years ago. The headline read, "Raymond Whitfield, the trillionaire who doesn't want you to know his name." And beneath the headline was a photograph. An older man, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, standing in front of what appeared to be a Texas ranch. Daniel had met him once. At his own wedding. Cassie had introduced him as, "My dad, Ray, he keeps to himself." Ray had worn a simple shirt and shaken Daniel's hand and said, "You take care of my girl." Daniel had forgotten about him by the end of the reception. The board meeting was called for Thursday. Daniel walked in expecting to fight. He had his lawyers, his pitch, his 8 years of sweat built into that company. He sat at the head of the table out of habit. Raymond Whitfield walked in and sat across from him. No entourage. No theatrics. Just a cup of black coffee and a single folder. "Mr. Mercer," he said calmly. "I'm going to make this brief." The board voted. In 40 minutes, Daniel was removed as CEO of the company he'd built, the company Cassie's savings had quietly rescued in its first year, something the financial audit had just uncovered and documented in full. But that wasn't the moment that broke him. The moment that broke him came after, when Raymond slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a bank transfer record. $112,000. Cassie's nursing savings. Wired into Mercer Tech in its near-bankrupt year, listed under a holding name Daniel had never questioned. "She never told you," Raymond said. Not as an accusation. Almost gently. "That's the kind of woman my daughter is." Daniel stared at the paper. "She worked double shifts for 2 years to save that money," Raymond continued. "She believed in you when the bank didn't. When nobody did." He picked up his coffee. "And you handed her a manila envelope and told her to keep the car." The room was silent. Daniel found Cassie that evening at the small apartment she'd rented near the hospital. He knocked for a long time before she opened the door. She looked lighter, somehow. Tired, but lighter. "I know," she said before he could speak. She stepped aside to let him in, because she was still, even now, that kind of person. The apartment was almost empty. A mattress, some boxes, a small plant on the windowsill. On the kitchen counter, a single photo, the two of them at their courthouse wedding, laughing at something outside the frame. Daniel looked at that photo and felt something cave in inside his chest. "I didn't know about your father," he started. "I know you didn't." Her voice wasn't angry. It was something quieter and sadder than anger. "And if you had known, that's the part that would have destroyed me, Daniel. If I thought you only stayed because of money." She looked at him steadily. "I never wanted you to love me for what my family had. I wanted you to love me for me. Cassie. You didn't. Simple. Final. You stopped seeing me a long time ago. I just didn't want to believe it." He reached for her hand. She let him hold it for a moment, one last moment, then she gently pulled it away. "I'm going to be okay," she said. "I've always known how to take care of myself." Daniel Mercer lost his company. He lost his house in the settlement review once the full financial history was revealed. Brooke stopped returning his calls approximately 4 days after the board meeting. Turns out she'd been attracted to the CEO title, not the man underneath it. He moved into a rental in South Austin and started over at 34, which is a brutal age to learn who you actually are. Cassie finished her nursing degree and took a position at a children's hospital. She moved into a beautiful house outside of Dallas, quietly purchased, no announcement, her father's housewarming gift to her. She planted a garden. She got a dog. She slept through the night. She never once used her father's money to hurt Daniel. She didn't have to. She simply walked away, and the truth did the rest. Raymond Whitfield gave one rare interview the following year. A journalist asked him why he'd waited so long to intervene. He said, "My daughter didn't ask me to. She handled it herself. I just made sure the books were honest." Some people spend their whole lives trying to look important. They chase the title, the address, the right person on their arm. And somewhere along the way, they let go of the one person who loved them before they were anything at all. By the time they realize what they had, that person has already built a beautiful life without them in it. That's not a tragedy. That's karma doing its job quietly.